Welcome to Let's Talk About It Today. I'm Sheena.
And today I'm Tamara. Tamara might be Francis.
Yeah, that was a bit odd. I'll totally take that. Okay.
Trigger warning.
Trigger warning! Today I'm Mod. And we're talking about trigger warnings. So, if you're a delicate blossom, don't listen to this podcast. Okay. If you are a social justice warrior, don't listen to this podcast. If you are easily offended, don't listen to this podcast.
And on with normal programming.
Okay, so tomorrow, what is a trigger warning?
Okay, so a trigger warning is a piece of text before a video, before a piece like an article or a post, a podcast, telling people that something offensive this way may come.
Indeed. And I have increasingly seen people expecting trigger warnings on lesbian fiction novels, which is why I wanted to do this podcast today.
It's getting to the point where people want trigger warnings on frickin' Facebook posts.
Okay, so, but let's talk about what an actual trigger warning is and what it should be. Where does it stem from?
Okay, so the trigger warning has a very valid starting point.
Mm-hmm.
It comes about from the early 1900s when psychologists were working with people who are experiencing war neuroses. So people who've gone off to war and are coming back and are all sorts of messed up. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I think PTSD and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where the trigger warning comes from, because they have events, so like a car misfiring, and that is a trigger to them thinking about guns or war, and it sends them into a psychological hellhole. So that's where trigger warning comes from.
So it is an event, an occurrence that could set somebody with emotional distress
with painful memories
into like a bad emotional situation.
Yeah, so it can cause a panic attack, it can cause depression, it can cause them to slip back into bad habits. So say if they're a cutter, they can start cutting again. So, there are relevant places for things like trigger warnings to come in, but the internet has taken it too far.
All right. So a typical trigger warning then would be things like violence.
Mm-hmm. Violence,
killing,
things like disorders. So something like anorexia or bulimia, where, seeing something, I don't know, about weight or whatever, can cause people to spiral back into that.
Okay.
Obviously in the right platform, because if you're reading a freaking magazine about losing weight, you don't need a trigger warning.
All right. So now in lesbian fiction, right, there are legitimate times when I would put a trigger warning on a book.
Okay.
I would put a trigger warning on a book for 3 instances.
Okay.
Abuse.
Sure.
Like violent abuse.
Sure.
Okay. Incest.
Okay.
And molestation.
Okay. Well, I see where you're coming from with this, but wouldn't this kind of stuff then just cater for any book out there?
Yes and no. And I'll tell you why. Unfortunately, in the lesbian community, there is a higher incidence of these things being as a part of a past.
Okay, so maybe what we need to do is create some sort of system like they use for movies, where you have, the little triangle with a PG whatever saying this book contains sex, violence, and rock and roll.
Absolutely.
Because, I'm not sure that I agree with the whole trigger warning thing, but I think it's valid that if a book contains rape, maybe there should be, a little R somewhere signifying this book contains rape.
Absolutely. And on a personal note, I appreciate when an author does give me a heads up about something like rape, because I don't want to read about it.
Yes. No, I completely get it, and I do see how it's, something that should happen, but maybe some sort of rating system would
help. And I agree with that. But there are readers who take it to the extreme. They want warnings when there's any kind of sex.
Okay.
They want warnings when there are dildos used because there's penetrative sex. They want warnings when there's a butch-femme relationship happening.
A butch-femme relationship.
This was a conversation.
Do they realize that they're reading lesbian books? It's like, oh my god, I'm so triggered, there's a butch in the bushes. Please.
And while I agree with your sentiment, I also think that we need to be sensitive to, as well, to readers and kind of go, okay, I think that there's a line, and I don't think we should be having to put trigger warnings on everything, but I don't think we necessarily need to be making fun of people who are scared of butchers and bushes.
Okay, but you see, the thing is, like, it's kind of like saying, oh my god, there is a woman in a book, or there is a man in a book, or oh my god, there's a person that wears a prosthetic in a book.
And I agree with you.
How dare you be so scared by a normal human being that you can't read the book? That is...
I agree with you.
I am so angry by that thought. It's just... It's ridiculous.
No, and I agree with you. And I'm not saying it's right at all.
Because, like, I get it. And if some bad butch once did something bad to this person, I am so sorry for them. I really, really am. But it's kind of like saying, you know, you can't look at any man because once a man did something to you.
It's belittling also the lesbian experience. Because being butch is a very legitimate lesbian experience for many women. And to make butch women who are already on, like, the forefront of being attacked and being seen as other...
It's like, please go hide in your hole and don't, deign to show the world who you are.
And I so disagree with that. How do you handle this sort of...
I think valid trigger warnings when it will really mess you up psychologically or emotionally is one thing, okay? So if you need psychological help because these things put you in a mess in that way, fine, valid. But just because it's something that you don't like doesn't mean that it should have a trigger warning. It's like, I hate oranges. Loathe them. I can't even look at them without getting, like, my skin crawling. I really loathe them that much. I will not go to a restaurant and say I'm allergic to oranges, because I am not. And it's the same thing. It's kind of like, oh no, I'm allergic to bread, or I'm allergic to this, I'm allergic to that. It's the same special snowflake thing. It's trigger warnings and food intolerances that don't exist.
So, once again, I do believe that there are trigger warnings which we should be looking at in books.
Yes, exactly.
Sexual violence, physical violence, and
I think even something like profanity, because there are certain people who just don't like it. So, but I think like a movie type of rating where a book says what it is, and you can choose to either, read something that's family friendly or read something that is adult friendly. And then you can make the choice. But a book shouldn't have, a 3-page addendum full of trigger warnings.
No, absolutely. But I don't think profanity will cause a trigger.
I think some people...
I think molestation is possibly going to cause a trigger.
Yes.
I think rape is very likely to cause a trigger.
Yes.
I think incest is likely to cause a trigger.
I agree.
I think those 3 things are things that we need to tread lightly here.
I completely agree with you, and I don't think that is something that shouldn't be, thought of by the authors. I think that is something that needs to be addressed. I'm talking about the other stuff people decide to be offended by.
And I agree with you. I think some sort of rating system, just a quick thing that's like, okay, so there's profanity in this, and there's sex in this. Great. You're going to have people lining up around the block to buy that book.
No, probably, but
yes, nobody will, because there are people who are like, brilliant, I love when a character swears because it makes me feel like less of a fucktard.
It's a real person. Yeah, because think about it, like, if you're not writing for children, like we're talking about lesbian books for adults here.
Yeah.
Right? Adults swear, adults have sex, lesbians have sex with other women. It's not a big surprise. So
which women exist?
Exactly, PEMs exist.
Dildos
exist.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're reading lesbian books, you are an adult. And you should be able to cope with an adult world.
Otherwise, go read the young adult stuff, which doesn't have lesbian sex in it. And it has the romance, it's gentler, and it probably doesn't have profanity in it either.
Or try find, I don't know, they call them...
New adult.
No, there's adult ones. What do they call them? It's like soft romance or something. Or clean romance, something like that.
Really?
Yes, and they're mainly for people who are very strongly religious and believe in... like no sex before marriage and all of that kind of thing. But such romance is designed for that kind of person.
Huh.
So,
but I think a rating system would be a great idea. Actually,
I
you're
feel
just
like
so
I'm just
genius. I know, like I'm very proud of
because
you.
it doesn't have to take up a lot of space.
No, the little triangle things.
Yeah.
All right, publishers, authors, there we go. Go create a triangle rating system.
Because it doesn't have to even be specific. If it says sexual violence, it's sexual violence. Just don't read the book.
Right?
You know,
and then you don't have to go into the whole thing of like, oh. But I also agree with you. I think the special snowflakes in the world who don't want to read about butchers, oh my gosh, learn some tolerance.
Be nice to other people. Go chat to people who are different to you.
Yeah.
Because you will see they're not there to hurt you. They're just people living their lives.
And butchers are the nicest human beings. They're so sweet and they're so like, because they are so picked on. Like, oh, I actually just, it makes me angry. I want to go smack people who hurt butchers.
Yeah. So, as you can tell, like, I have very strong feelings on trigger warnings.
Mm-hmm. Really? You were so subtle. Before we go, I want to read the funniest definition that I came across from the Urban Dictionary for trigger warning.
Again, a trigger warning before this. If you are a super sensitive snowflake, stop now. Because
this is hilarious and very judgmental. Okay, top definition on Urban Dictionary for trigger warning is a phrase posted at the beginning of various posts, articles, or blogs. Its purpose is to warn weak-minded people who are easily offended that they might find what is being posted offensive in some way due to its content, causing them to overreact or otherwise start acting like a dipshit. Popular on Reddit, SRS, or other places that social justice warriors like to hang out. Trigger warnings are unnecessary 100% of the time due to the fact that people who are easily offended have no business randomly browsing the internet anyways. As a result of the phrase's irrelevance, most opinions that start out with this phrase tend to be simplistic and dull since they were made by people ridiculous enough to think that the internet is supposed to cater to people who can't take a joke. Trigger warning. If you think this phrase needs to be posted before politically incorrect opinions, you don't belong on the internet.
I love it.
This was posted with the hashtags troll, trigger, Tumblr, feminazi. What's a feminazi?
Feminazi.
What's a feminazi?
I think it's, those feminists that are super, like, feminist and everything you do is wrong because feminism.
We'll have to get into that sometime.
So that's hilarious, and I agree with a lot of it. I do still think that there are appropriate times for trigger warnings.
And I think where a trigger warning comes from is fascinating and appropriate. I think...
And keep that in mind before you cry trigger warning. Keep in mind that this has a root in someone who's gone through a very legitimate trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And your not liking breadsticks has nothing to do with it.
Are you a trigger warning Nazi?
I am.
So this is a whole new thing for me, a feminazi. Alright. I'm Sheena.
And today I'm Tamara.
You know you're a shitlet, right?
I try.
Go rate us on iTunes because that helps us jump up the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Or crawl really slowly, in our case, up the charts. But then basically other people can find us and then we feel motivated to keep making the show because otherwise we just feel sad.
Mm-hmm. Trigger warning. Sad.
I just don't even have anything else to say.
Bye.